to its relationship with the United States, it often takes a back seat. It often takes a back seat to very important issues like Libya or whatever else is happening in the Middle East. And Latin Americans often feel that way, that our concerns are sort of in the backdrop. And so the Mexican president is hoping that he can convince the U.S. president to raise the priority here, to really start to pay attention. And also he's sending a message to his constituents here in the United States that he has the power to come to the United States and actually bring this case to them.
Now, Frank, one of the questions put to the President Calderon was about arming U.S. agents. I mean, obviously, they've got an enormous border to try and cover. A lot of arms are going from the U.S. into Mexico. Is something like that feasible?
You can imagine that in Mexico here, that's not taken very well, partly because of the long history. Remember, on a number of occasions, the United States actually invaded Mexico, and part of Mexico's territory, half of the territory, was eventually sent over to the United States, sold and turned into the United States, the southwestern U.S. And so there's this reluctance to have U.S. agents armed here. And there's reluctance even from powerful opposition leaders. I spoke to one of them. He is Porfirio Muñoz Ledo. He's the chairman of the Congressional Foreign Relations Committee, Jane, and he expressed grave concerns about this and about the Mérida initiative as well. This is what he had to say.
The
U.S. government does not have confidence in the government of Mexico. It believes that Calderón is governing under stress. They do not have the confidence in Mexican justice. They believe civil authorities are corrupt, and they do not trust the Mexican army. Then, why does the U.S. keep giving Mexico money? Additionally, the U.S. government is under great internal pressure from the right wing. Either we step back from this war, or the U.S. will end up intervening in Mexico.
At this moment, relations between the United States and Mexico are increasingly complex, with issues of security on the table, the drugs war raging, and with questions of immigration. How do you personally view the United States-Mexico relationship at this moment?
Here is where the drugs consumed in the U.S. are produced, which hasn't been regulated. The border hasn't either, and now they complain about what is happening. In an open border, you also leave the door open for weapons. So then the strategy needs to be revised completely.
And it's going to have to be really effective with something like $48 billion earned every year. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Frank Contreras with that update. Let's take you back to Doha now. That's all from us here in Washington.
Jane, many thanks. Two more stories I want to tell you about before we go on this news hour. The situation in Côte d'Ivoire, first of all, where security forces have killed 6 women at a rally in support of the opposition leader, Alassane Ouattara. More than 200,000 people have fled Abidjan after days of clashes between protesters and President Laurent Gbagbo's supporters. Morgues and hospitals are struggling to cope with the influx of casualties. Gbagbo has also cut water and electricity supplies to opposition strongholds in the north. Now, rising food prices have been one of the triggers for much of the recent unrest that we've seen throughout the Middle East and North Africa. And the UN's food agency has warned that food prices have risen to their highest ever since records began over 20 years ago. Now, the Food and Agriculture Organization says that its food price index rose by 2.2% last month. It's the 8th consecutive month that food prices have risen. The price hikes are being driven by the increasing cost of cereals, meats and dairy products. Sugar was the only food that didn't record an increase. And just to add to the mix, it's feared that an oil spike caused by the situation in Libya could further exacerbate the problem. Just to remind you that during this news hour, we heard President Obama speaking live at the White House. He said that Colonel Gaddafi of Libya should step down and that history was moving against him. Stay with us on Al Jazeera. I'll be back with more news in just a few moments.
As the fog hangs warily over London, we can always offer you the perfect pick-me-up.
Hello, would you believe we have yet another winter storm making its way across the United States? Big area cloud just piling its way through the plains. That's heading towards the Great Lakes. We've got quite a keen southerly wind coming in, actually, and that's going to continue just nudging its way a little further northwards, pushing the warm, moist air, the damp weather, into the cold air, and that's why it's readily turning to snow just around the Midwest into that northeastern corner. Temperatures are recovering with those southerly winds, around 6 Celsius there for New York, creeping into double figures for DC, but as you can see for eastern Canada, I think you are looking more in the way of snow to come here. Some snow too, a possibility over the mountain states. Wet and windy weather will creep its way into the Pacific Northwest, into BC as we go through Friday into Saturday. Notice we're warming up there for LA, temperatures getting up to around 23 Celsius. Should stay largely dry here over the next couple of days. Largely dry too across the islands of the Caribbean. I think for the Leeward Islands you could see some sharp showers, some wet weather there too into Panama, maybe Nicaragua, Costa Rica also seeing a little bit of damp weather over the next couple of days. We come into Europe and here the damp weather is really concentrated across central parts of the Mediterranean. It's been very wet, very windy here recently. That will continue to be the case, but drier and brighter further north.
Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.
You don't fight threats, you fight enemies.
Our core function remains the territorial defense of our populations and our member states.
Sanctions, do you think they will work?
A huge number of Western forces have not made huge progress.
The public no longer even believes that, we are there because we are building democracy.
Our empire is imploding. It itself is an illusion.
Empire with Marwan Bashara on Al Jazeera.
If you're a Nokia user, you can download Al Jazeera's news widget from Nokia's Ovies store. The news widget, available on compatible Nokia devices, gives users quick and easy access to real-time news updates from Al Jazeera English. See the world in real time. Al Jazeera Mobile.
Opposition supporters in Libya pay their respects to the anti-Gaddafi fighters killed in the battle for Brega. 19 hours GMT. I'm Adrian Finnegan. This is Al Jazeera, live from Doha. Also on the program,
some of my brothers in Zawiya, they will catch all of the blacks peoples and they will give you gun, and they will be at the back and they are saying that you should go forward and fight.
Concern grows for foreigners left inside Libya as the UN says the country's borders are at crisis point. 6 women are shot dead in Côte d'Ivoire as they march in support of the presidential claimant Alassane Ouattara. Egypt gets another new prime minister as Mubarak's man quits. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court says that he'll investigate the Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi for crimes against humanity. Thousands of people are thought to have died after security forces targeted protesters in unrest which began last month. While forces loyal to Gaddafi